Hello, 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 my friends. Thank you for joining me. I'm Nicholas W. Fuller, and this is Person Behind the Pages, the show where we get to know the creators that make the things we love. I'm joined today by L Ana Ellis. How you doing, Anna?
I'm doing good.
Thank you for joining me. This has been a long time coming, hasn't it?
Oh, it has. Yeah. We've been
Right?
planning this for a while now, but no, it's actually great to be here now. I'm kind of glad we didn't do it earlier.
Yeah. No, this has definitely worked out. I'm excited to talk with you. We're kind of chopping it up just a little bit before we go live. Looks like Mike's already in the chat. Hi, Mike. But yeah, we're going to talk books. You've got a complete trilogy out now, which is awesome. I definitely want to talk to you about, reading and books and what got you into writing, and those are fun topics. I'm going to try to tease out of you like a favorite book, but it sounds like that's going to be an impossible question, you know?
You know what? I would not want to break the hearts of any of my other favorite books. It's kind of like your children. You
Right.
can't you can't choose a favorite.
Yeah, I understand. I also want to talk about going to Worldcon in Glasgow because that's pretty
Mhm,
awesome, and
mhm.
that's something I would love. I'm really thinking about going to Worldcon in Seattle next year. Are you going to go to that one?
Oh, yes, for sure. I have
For
family in
sure.
Seattle, but also, it'll be so much more convenient to go
Right.
to con like here in the US
Right.
because you might I could probably say this for later, but I'll tell you anyway, like
Yeah.
we three of us went, and what we did is we each took like about 12 books each because I was selling books there too. So that was a bit of a thing we had to figure out, is like how we're gonna get the books there.
Oh, true. True.
Yeah. Seattle be easier that way.
Yeah. Is okay. I want to talk about that one more. But isn't also I've heard that the 2026 one I think is supposed to be in LA. Is that
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
for sure?
LA is decided. Yes.
Okay. Cool. I wonder if that one might even be easier for me. Maybe I used to live like just outside of LA. That would
Oh,
be actually that would be kind of. Have you ever been to LA at all?
not for a long time, but yeah. Yeah, a long
Yeah.
time ago. Yeah.
Used to. This sounds really hoity-toity, but it's not like that hoity-toity. But like, there's an island off the coast called Santa Catalina Island or Catalina Island. Have you heard of it?
I think I might have heard of it. Yeah.
My aunt and uncle had like a little vacation condo on that island. I used to every
Oh,
summer like go there with my family and like we'd spend a little time on that, which was
well,
awesome, right?
that sounds like the perfect Worldcon experience. Just go like
Right?
hang out in the condo and
Right. Well, I mean, I'm sure it's not going to be like close, but what? Yeah, I've had in mind that it would be lovely to like take my wife there sometime and like show her that island that I used to,
Mhm.
maybe go to the Worldcon and then also go to that. That would be amazing.
Yeah,
Hashtag goals. Hashtag goals.
right, right. I'm still I haven't decided yet on LA. Just like the last time I was in LA, now it was like 20 years ago, but I didn't enjoy it that much because I spent half the time that I was there stuck in traffic.
Yeah, that sounds like LA. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
and so maybe I need to give LA a chance to redeem redeem itself. But
I
yeah,
mean,
the jury is still out on LA.
fair.
Man, I
Well, okay, I want to talk about Glasgow more, but
okay.
have you like what's LA maybe not a fun place to be. What's about like Glasgow or anywhere else that you've traveled to? What's like a favorite travel destination you've been to? I know that's a very random question, but that's how I roll sometimes, you know?
Yeah, I've gotten a chance to go some interesting places. Like I went with my mom to Russia.
Ooh,
So I don't know if I would go back
right
to
now. Right. Right.
but at the time it was really cool, and it was such a different culture, and I loved learning about it, and seeing like their different buildings and everything.
When was this?
Um,
Roughly.
2004, I think,
Okay.
probably
Okay.
around there. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, so it was a while back. So Russia was really cool, and then I you put on my profile that I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Paraguay, so
Yes,
I have
yes.
definitely a place in my heart, a large place. And,
Right.
I know my way around the country now. So I think if, I was going there just for the first time by myself, it would be a little scary. But now, I know, like, if I find the airport, I know which bus to take to get downtown. And, and honestly, I don't think they've changed in the
Sure.
decades since
Sure.
I was a volunteer. Um,
That's cool.
and I have friends there. So, definitely probably the most interesting place I've been, and the one that's closest to my heart as well. With any luck, I'll get back next year.
That's
I used
super
to
neat.
say, like, I didn't want to go more than 5 years because I went 5 years. One time I was there, I didn't go again for another 5 years, and it had changed so much.
Sure.
We actually really urbanized. Like, there were shopping malls, and there
Mm.
were, like, like regular gas stations with little convenience stores attached to them, and just things like that weren't there before. And so then I was like, never again will I go 5 years. But it's been probably actually quite, we might even be going on 8 years at this point. So definitely, like, hashtag goals, like you said, maybe.
Well, we got Karen from New Mexico and Dr. Melissa from Minnesota. Hi, everyone. I know Mike is in Virginia. Oh, yeah, Mike is also in Virginia. I'm in Wilmington. Yeah, we got people all over the place. That's awesome. So when you were in the Peace Corps and you were in Paraguay, were you there for a year?
Well, actually, it added up to 3. So you had 3
Wow.
months training, then you're there for 2 years. And then I went back and I worked in the training center. And those were like 4-month stints, because volunteers train for 3 months, you have a month to prepare. So I trained a group of environmental education volunteers, which is what I was a volunteer in. And then I stuck around to train a group of urban youth development volunteers. And then my sister said, I've been taking care of your 3 cats now for 8 months. Come back home.
Get back home and get these cats out of here. That's funny.
Well, we lived together then. So they still lived with her. She was still stuck with them, but she didn't have to take care. And she had 1 cat, so she didn't have to take care of all 4 cats by herself. We were able to split up the workload, I guess.
4 cats does sound like a lot. I was talking to a friend recently and I said, I now have 5 dogs. And this is a friend, like a writer friend. He lives in Australia. He's like,
Yeah.
how did I not know that you have 5 dogs? 5 is too many. It's too many.
Well, I have 2 cats now.
Yeah.
I have, my husband has forbid me from getting any more cats as much as I try. And they're both black cats, which I was kind of hoping they'd come, like, be a part of my Halloween decorations. But they kind of, they're celebrities. They make an appearance if they want to, like, it's on their terms.
Yep.
And really, for the most part, they do not, choose to make appearances. So, maybe if we get really lucky, but probably not.
This sounds like typical cat behavior. They're all divas, right? Yeah. Yeah, I tried to forbid my wife from more dogs, but that
it didn't work.
And we got a 5th. Yeah, she rescued it.
I'll have to talk to her and see. I need to get some.
Yeah, how she got away with it.
Yeah, how she got away.
Well, part of it was like, my kids fell in love with the 5th dog. I didn't want the 5th dog, but now my kids are in love with it. What am I going to do?
Kids are in love with it. I mean,
right.
Yeah, you can't say no to that.
Let me see if I can
rescue. I mean,
yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well,
oh,
kind of see that. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, now I see. Oh, adorable. So relaxed.
She's like dog number 3, but
that's cute.
Yep. Anyway, we have paid the internet animal tax, the pet tax now. Right?
Well, you didn't ask about, like, my other pets who did join me. So, I mean, this one, doesn't really have a name. It just kind of shows up. Then, then we got the face hugger, and then I think we now understand what happened to the dinosaurs, because it's T-Rex here. Like, he couldn't really, like, fight off the face huggers. So, like now we understand. I've sort of solved that mystery.
That's funny.
or I don't know
I
if it's
did
history.
I did see the face hugger. I did think that was pretty awesome.
Yeah,
Is it kind of like a pillow material or?
yeah, it's soft.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
like it. I
so
like it.
right.
I've seen it like someone made like a costume where it had like the legs and the long tail, but it was like a costume for like a wiener dog, so it turned the wiener dog into a face
Gosh, that's
hugger,
so funny.
right?
That's really
Imagine
funny.
how terrifying that would be to see it going down the road though. I would be
Yeah.
I would be out of there so fast. All right. So tell me about, Worldcon in Glasgow. Again, I'd love to go to the Seattle one. What can I expect?
Oh, okay. I think the Seattle one will be bigger. It
Hmm.
was, I think, oh gosh, I don't remember. I think maybe they were expecting 5,000, but 7,000. But then somebody I talked to was thinking it might have been closer to 5,000.
Okay.
They do a report, and actually, I probably should look that up. But um, so it wasn't huge. There's a lot of book lovers.
Yeah, of
'Cause I
course.
go to other cons and, people walk by my table and then, if I try to engage them, they'll be like, "Oh, sounds interesting," but I don't really read. You get that at other cons. But at Glasgow, I guess because it really like they do the Hugo Awards at the World
Hmm.
Con,
Hmm. Hmm.
and the the Hugo Awards are they do like film and all those other things too, but the really big Hugo Awards are for the books.
Yep.
And so you get like a lot of book lovers there, and so I just saw people walking around with like piles of books. And and then some of them would be like, "Oh, sorry, I already spent all my money on books."
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but
And
yeah,
you're
so
like, me too.
right, exactly. No,
Yeah.
no, I don't think I got away without buying any books.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know what? I knew I would have to bring back whatever books were left over in my suitcase. And then the other two people who were flying back, they weren't coming to the same place as I was. So I wanted to try to get all the leftover books in my one suitcase. Um,
Hmm.
so I was like, no more books. If there's anything I like, I'll just like buy it online afterwards or
Fair.
whatever.
Fair.
But the other thing is I buy, I'm around authors and I hear of so many interesting books, and I buy so many more books than I can actually read. That
Yeah.
is probably just wise for me to, kind of maybe
Put
not
some limits. Put
put
some
some limits.
restrictions. Yeah.
Exactly. Book
Yeah.
limits. Not, some people probably will be upset, to hear that. You know,
Right? Yeah.
because it's books. Like, how can you not buy more? But you do eventually run out of bookshelf space, and
Oh,
I know,
what? Oh,
I know. And
wait, wait, wait. No, you don't. No, you don't.
what is
Right? It's a Kindle, you know?
oh, Kindle. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Right,
Yeah.
right.
Right? There you go. All the
Yeah.
books you want.
But then I
All the
feel like a
books.
little guilty,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
books I'm
No,
not
I
reading.
get it.
So, I still buy quite a few, but do try to put some limits on it, maybe.
But tons of book people walking around all over the place. Again,
Yeah.
I haven't been to a World Con. I've been to other. I actually just went to Dragon Con for the first time when that
Oh,
happened a
yeah.
couple
Yeah.
months ago.
Really cool.
That was
Yeah.
fantastic. I was struck by just how many cosplayers there were, which is always fun to
Oh,
people watch. Go ahead.
yeah, Worldcon, I don't know if it's because, like, kind of like an older con, like, I go to cons, like, some of them are sort of like old Star Trek conventions that
Hmm.
have kind of developed a little bit over the time, and
Hmm.
then I go to other cons that are more they're all, like, young people, like, the Star Trek the used to be Star Trek conventions, it tends to be a slightly older crowd.
Hmm.
If people are there's not as many people in costume, but if they are, they tend to wear Star Trek. And then I
Sure.
go to other cons where like everybody's kind of younger. They probably most of them grew up like reading Harry Potter, but then those have like tons of costumes, but only rarely do you actually see Star Trek costumes. So Worldcon didn't. There were definitely people in costume, but there were not a lot as far as the cons I go to. I think it was on like the less costumed side of
Okay.
things.
Okay. Sure. Sure.
Um, and I didn't get to any of the programming. My
Oh,
sister
really?
went to some, but I was just mostly at the table, and there were like lines for some of them, and it was just kind of a challenge to figure out where to go. So it was just sort of easier for me to stay at the table. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
fun. I mean, I love people watching and talking to the
Yes.
people who go by and everything. So that was really, I had a good time in the convention hall.
Yeah.
Um, oh, but then okay, so our first day, we get there.
Hmm.
We get there fairly early in the morning because we've taken an overnight flight, and so when we get to our hotel, our room isn't ready yet. So
Okay.
they're like, well, we can take some of your luggage, and we're like, okay, let's go see if the convention hall was attached to the hotel, but it was this really windy hallway to get
Okay.
to the convention hall from the hotel. Really one of these things that, like, if you don't know where it is, you're not going to find it.
Hmm.
And so we're trying to figure out how to get to the convention hall to go register. And so my sister grabs the first person who's wearing a badge who walks by, and she's like, "Oh, you look like you probably, know where you're going. Can you tell us how to get there?" And I'm reading his badge, and it says John Scalzi. And I just
Ah,
finished reading Starter Villain. And
yeah.
and the reason I had read it was because it was one of the books that was up for like the Hugo Award.
Right.
And I was
Right.
trying to get, I only got through his and partway through another one, but I was trying to get through them. And I was like, oh wow. I had one of those moments. I was like, I'm talking to one of like the Hugo Award nominees, and I just tried to
Right.
speak, and it was so funny because I got kind of embarrassed because then I was like, oh, I just finished reading your book. And he seemed very humble, and I don't think he knew like what to do with me kind of being a fangirl on him or whatever. But
That's funny.
he was so nice. He gave us the greatest directions on how to get there. And
Yeah.
it was interesting because there are some other authors that like I follow on Instagram, and I saw them walking around, and I'm like, hey, I kind of feel like I know that person because I
I
follow
know
them
who
on
that is.
Instagram.
Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
was like, oh, but wait, they don't know me, so not sure that counts.
Did you get to like? Did you get so at Dragon Con? I guess there's like this one bar in particular where a lot of authors, especially indie authors, like hang out. This the bar in the Westin. So like in the
Oh,
evenings, you go and like show up and you just like you get to kind of rub shoulders and get to talk with like lots of different. I met like I briefly talked to Ryan Cahill, but I talked a lot with like Andy Pelican. I've met Jeff Brown, the cover designer.
oh yeah,
Super
my
cool.
cover designer.
Nice, nice, nice.
Yeah, I was going to mention that because he was up for his one of his covers was up for like the best cover award at Dragon Con.
Yeah, yeah. He
I
took
voted
that
for him and
last
he
fall.
didn't win, which of course is a bummer. But yeah, no. And so Jeff Brown is great. Oh, that's another thing about Glasgow is I actually met him there because
Yeah. Okay.
the Broken Binding publisher is having him do these special editions.
Right. Yeah, he's doing a
They're
lot of those
they're,
lately, right?
they're having him go with their booth around to these different cons because people are really excited about the covers. Like that, I don't know if you've seen the cover he just did
Oh
for
yeah.
the Three Body Problem.
So
And
good.
they're just so beautiful.
Yeah.
um and so I'm really excited for him. And then I could tell people if they bought my book, like, hey, because people, that's often one thing that draws them in about the books is they really like the covers. And so then I could be like, hey, the cover designer is right here at the con, and he said that he would sign your books if you take him over. And in fact, I kept a copy
You
for
got
my, it shows up best on this one, but he had like a kind of a special silver pen.
Ooh,
It's hard to tell
that's cool.
right
Yeah,
there.
yeah, no, I see. Yeah.
Sign one of each of my books. He signed the covers, so I
That's
thought
awesome.
that was kind of fun.
Right? Yeah.
Um, but back to your question, if there's a place where all the indie authors hung out or whatever, they didn't
Mm.
tell me, so I would.
That's funny.
Um, I have my cousin's husband is a Hugo Award winner for best fan cartoonist. He's won
Mm.
he's won 4 times in the like 90s and early 2000s.
Wow, cool.
Best fan artist, I think. So fan artist is art you don't get paid for. So
Sure.
he's been going to world cons since, I don't know, 70s or whatever.
Oh
And
wow.
he's been like a number of the drawings in the World Con souvenir book were from were drawings that he had done. And so whenever
Oh.
I wanted like kind of insight into the Hugo Awards or, World Cons or whatever, I would go to him and I would ask him. But then he did not tell me if there was a special bard go hang out in.
Yeah.
So the one difference is like Dragon Con is always in the same place, but World Con,
Yes, yes. Yeah, that's true. That's
it's
true.
been in Glasgow before, but it's a while usually between
Right.
times. So
Right.
not
So that you'd have to like decide on a location for everyone to meet beforehand or something. I don't know. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Makes
yeah.
sense. Okay. All right. Well, you've given us a perfect segue to talk a little bit more about your books. Like, um, they're lovely covers. I like them. I can obviously see them back behind you. Very nice. I like the kind of continuity of the look between the three. Are we working with like three different characters, like one for each book?
Yeah, so all three of these characters are in all three books.
Okay. Okay.
They each they each have their own book where they're sort of the central role.
Mm-hmm.
Like the book starts off with that character, it ends with that character, and that character plays the main or has the most stuff going on for them within that particular book.
Mm-hmm.
So it starts off with, sorry, because this is not a mirror. There we go.
Starts off.
You don't realize how used you are to like mirror view when you get into not mirror view, and all of a sudden you're pointing in like the wrong direction. But okay, so this is the first book right here. That's Genesis, and the woman you see there is Mariella, and she's a vice president of a virtual reality company. And then you see in that book, that's Cooper. Oh, and actually, let me show you, because I also had an artist, her name's Heather Friedel, who did some really great cover art.
Ooh.
So this is Mariella from the first book. She's wearing that headband in the first scene because
awesome.
somebody gives it to her to block her chip from being spied on in a meeting, and she thinks it's ugly, and then she gets photographed wearing it, and it goes viral, and then everybody starts like wearing one. And so
She's a trendsetter.
she absolutely is. So that's the main character in the first book, and then this is Cooper, who's the main character in the second book, and he does not have an embedded chip, so he's welding. He's more into the tactile stuff. He doesn't spend a lot or any time like in the virtual reality, so he's actually takes a very different approach from her. And then you get Maya. She's that one. She's the main character in the third book, and she also doesn't have a chip. So she's using this well, and it's not because she doesn't have a chip, but she has to access an older computer system, an older server actually, that's in this very technologically unadvanced area. And she works with computers, but only legacy computers, because you want to work with the newer computers, you're expected to interact with them through your chip. And since she doesn't have one, she works with, like grandma and grandpa's, 40-year-old, like compact computer or whatever. And so that's what she's holding right there.
Wow. Okay. All right. When clearly this is sci-fi. Like this is this like secondary world sci-fi? Like a totally a long time ago in a galaxy far away, or this is all on Earth?
It's like it's Earth 100 years in the future.
Okay.
So
okay.
It's Earth with technology like extrapolated from what might be actually plausible in the future, which I'm not sure if everything is 100% plausible, but I think for the most part, people feel like it's fairly realistically plausible. The one thing I actually did have to worry about, it took me a long time to write the trilogy. I started in 2016 really writing. I had the idea really like in 2010. I started really writing in 2016. I finally got the first book published in 2022. So that was like 6 years later. And now 2 years later, I'm finally finishing it. So really like 8 years total. And what I found is is it felt sometimes like technology was going to like surpass or what was in my book so that it would already feel outdated. Um, well, and part of it that almost now I regret is that there was like this virtual reality part. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to call it the metaverse because I like that term better. Idea of being like immersed in like, you know, the universe. And then after I've like created this and, you know, changed everything in the books, and Facebook comes along and decides that they're meta and like they want to create the metaverse now. And then I'm reading like this New York Times, I think, article today on how like, you know, the metaverse is so like last year's technology. And I'm like, okay, now I regret calling it the metaverse. I probably should have just stuck with virtual reality. And also,
I
you
would,
know, I don't like it that it's so closely associated now with Facebook. Because when
yeah,
I started using that term, it wasn't like Facebook's term, but now it is.
I would so lean into that. I'd be like, oh, I had the metaverse before Zuckerberg. I wrote about the metaverse.
Yeah.
Zuckerberg, that
Oh,
freaking hack. What a copycat phony.
yeah, exactly. That's perfect.
Yep.
And then another thing that was sort of changing around the time I was writing the books is I started hearing it. I was thinking embedded people having chips embedded in their brains, you know, this is going to be like 30, 50, whatever years out. But like as I was writing the book, were actually, I think, people that had chips, yeah, embedded in their
Yep.
in their brains. And it can't yet do all the things, of course, that the chips can do for the characters that are in the book.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah. But yeah,
but
I mean,
yeah.
well, hey, you're clearly right on the pulse of, you know, plausibility and possible, you know? Turns out you're like
Yeah.
you're actually a fortune teller.
Well, you know, and you know, that's the interesting thing when you write sci-fi and you're writing sci-fi that's supposed to be, you know, 100 years in the future, is it can turn into this thing, you know, kind of like 1984, and people get to 1984 and they're like, look, it's not at all like they said in the book, you know, and so it's set
Yeah.
in.
And then like some people are like, good.
I know.
Right.
Yeah. Um, and so like it's set in 2111, 2115.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I know I said 2115. And so I can see it, like I would love to think that, you know, in 2115 people are still like reading these novels and enjoying them. But then there's also that, you know, at 2115 they could be like, well, this is nothing like our world.
Sure. Sure.
Right now. And you know what, I it's important for me to remember that I'm not trying to predict the future.
Yeah.
This is supposed to feel plausible, but I'm not trying to come up with like an accurate depiction of the future. It's really meant to be a comment on the present. Like the
Yeah.
way people
Yeah.
use technology in the books, it's not supposed to be this is like how I think it's going to be in the future. It's like this is sort of a reflection of things we're doing now that when you look at how you that might get extended into the future, um, you know, this is what it might look like, or this or some of the consequences, you know, both good and bad that might come around from that.
Sure.
And you know, I was just thinking recently too about things that, you know, I just couldn't have predicted. And I'm kind of getting the feeling that maybe nobody predicted things like there's been a lot in the news lately about how much power AI is using up. And you know, that's something we're going to have to like address at some point in the future. And I know that never occurred to me to like even think about. And maybe there's some people that really, you know, really good at this stuff that did occur to them, you know,
Yeah.
10 or 20 years ago. But you know, it's just it kind of you know, kind of interesting to see 2011, 15, because then you can see all the things that like I like, yeah, I would be fun to see like what I didn't even think of.
Right. Right.
You
Right.
know what, and will technology continue to develop at the same pace that it has like over the last 50 years, or will it, you know, slow down, or will we have this like huge dystopian situation where we're no longer able to use our technology, you know, for one reason or another.
Fingers crossed we can avoid that. I really like, you know, air conditioning and like the
I,
rest of my technology, you know. But
I do too.
yeah, well, I think that's an interesting point though about um, you know, technology and continuing to develop. I mean, like I think part of the answer to that has to be how do you define technology and like which pieces of technology, and then going to your point about, you know, not being able to predict the future. Who could ever be in like what is it, 03, I think, like the Wright brothers did their first powered flight.
Right. You
And
can,
then go
yeah.
ahead.
No, no, I was just going to say what I think you were going to say, if not correct me, but like you could not in any way have predicted like where things were going to end up.
Right? Yeah. 66 years later, man on the moon,
Yeah.
But then also it's been how long since then? And we went to the moon and that was cool. And then we sort of like, we've been to orbit lots and lots and space stations, but we haven't gone any further. We haven't been back to the moon. We've never been to Mars, like
Yeah. Yeah.
like
No.
who would be like, yes, all that makes sense. All that makes sense, exactly
Right.
the way I envisioned it all,
Right. Well, and you know what? I do have to say that actually, given current technology and
Yeah.
scientific thinking,
Yeah.
what I have predicted here actually is the truth. If you subscribe to multiverse theory, because multiverse theory says that there are an infinite number of universes with like an infinite number of possibilities that will have
Yeah.
happened.
Yes.
So that means somewhere in
Yeah.
one of these infinite universes, this exact story will
Exactly.
have
Yeah.
happened.
Right. And they're
Yeah.
using
So it
the
actually is it's not science fiction. It is actually fact,
yeah.
actual truth, but provable through multiverse theory.
There we go. There we go. You're a genius.
I'm
Yep.
a
Yep.
genius. Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
I can write anything I want to. And I mean, I feel the limits to multiverse theory. Like it probably has to be somehow plausible. Like, like you can't defy the laws of physics, I
That's
think. I don't know.
yeah.
I actually haven't researched it to that point.
No, that
Uh,
makes sense. I don't think that you could be like, and then tomorrow a T-Rex made out of cheese will be rampaging Manhattan, and then be like, yes, that happened. That's how
yeah,
did you
just
know that?
friends holding hands with that with a face hugger. You know, yeah, right. So
Right.
there has to be maybe some limits to plausibility, but
That's
but
wild. The whole
that
like
kind of
multiverse thing.
expands your life as a science fiction author. You can say I have predicted the future in some universe somewhere.
Well done, Anna. Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
Right. They'll be holding your books, going like, see,
See, yeah,
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 she was ahead of the curve.
it was, yeah.
Can you imagine? Like, I mean, how next level would that be? Like sometimes, again, like taking it back a little bit, I've seen like cosplayers at cons and whatnot, and I'm like, man, it would be amazing to create characters that people want to cosplay like that. But like
Yes.
taking it further, could you imagine in like this multiverse where things actually do happen, kind of following your book, and like people are actually wearing the headband that you imagine to block their chips, and you're
I
like,
know, that would be so wild. But yeah, I thought of that cosplay idea too. Like that's when I would know I will have made it. I guess there's a
right,
couple ways to know you've made it. But like when people start like cosplaying your
right.
characters, you definitely
That's
you've
huge, right? Another
yeah.
one, if anyone has like a tattoo that's at all inspired by like your work, that's huge,
I hadn't
right?
even gotten that far. Oh
Yeah.
wow.
No, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
You're,
just
you're
like
like
these are things that would
astronomical
be
at
cool,
the
right?
point that people are
Yeah.
getting tattoos of your work. Yeah.
The other thing that I've seen one time. So have you heard Travis Baldree, who wrote Legends and Lattes?
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
He got a piece of fan mail where somebody actually made him a small little Lego kit that was the coffee shop and like the little characters from his book.
Oh my gosh.
That's some cool fan art right
Oh,
there,
that's so cool.
right?
Yeah, I sometimes see other authors, people will do like fan art drawings of their
Oh
characters,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
think
yeah,
that's pretty cool. I mean,
yeah.
definitely have considered that, like, I've sort of
Right,
made it at that point, halfway at
right,
least. But
right.
that's when you make a little Lego kit for you. That
That's
takes
next level,
yeah, that's
right?
cool.
I was like, how did he even do that? Because like he did like the little Lego person looked like some of the characters from the book, and
Oh,
apparently the fan like 3D printed some of this stuff. I'm like, it's incredible,
oh yeah. Okay, that
right?
makes sense. Yeah,
Right?
it's a 3D printing.
Amazing. People are just amazing, right? Just
Yeah, that's really cool.
all right. So, I want to get back and like talk about this series of books a little bit more, but first I want to kind of take it back. You talked about kind of writing for a while, but let's take it even further back. Like, have you always been kind of a writer? Like, were you in grade school being like, punching out little stories, or
I
did
remember being pretty young, let's
yeah,
say 7 or 8. And I have this memory of like being at a restaurant, I think, with my sisters who are older. They'll probably watch this, so um, they might disagree with my memory of the story. But I told them I wanted to be a writer, and I think they said like, "Well, what do you want to write about?" There's a butter knife there, and I like picked up the butter knife, and I don't know, I don't remember exactly how this goes, but then I wrote it down, but I misspelled knife, spelled it like "nif," and then they made fun of me for for calling my story "Butter Nif."
Butter Nymph. Yeah, yeah.
So so that kind of put a stall. It's kind of stalled my writing career for a while. Uh,
Thanks, sisters.
I know,
God,
I know,
like,
I know, I know. And then in high school, high school, I took writing classes. I had a creating writing class that I really enjoyed, and I was the editor of our creative writing magazine that was published every year. I still have it.
nice.
And I had a couple poems in it, and I wrote some short stories. One I still really like. It's very um basic, it's like high school writing, but someday, maybe I'll turn it into, like a full-fledged short story.
Sure, sure.
um and so, but and I went to college, and I was still wanting to be a writer, and I was going to get my degree in literature because that was the closest thing that they had to writing. But literature was more about like reading other people's books and analyzing them, and I didn't enjoy that as much. And then
Mhm.
I think it's a little unclear to me, but I think I realized that like the job options in with a degree in literature are fairly limited.
Limited. Yeah, yeah. You can teach
So
literature.
yeah, yeah, you can teach literature. Yeah, yeah. There's no really other jobs
Right, right.
that I can think of other than maybe writer. But to be a writer, I don't really think getting a degree in literature really helps you out to be a writer. Yeah, I'm sure it probably does to a certain extent. Like as you're studying, getting to know other works, it would probably help you out with your own.
It's
But
not
it's
gonna
not
hurt.
like I'm sorry.
It's not gonna hurt. Right,
It's
right,
not gonna
right.
hurt, yeah, but it's not like it's not even like a fine arts degree where you're practicing writing and learning
Right,
how to write. Like literature, you're just really reading other people's
right.
work. Um, so I changed my major to environmental studies, and I stopped writing for a very long time, and I think I
Mm.
just felt like I didn't have anything to write, like the inspiration kind of wasn't there.
No more nifs.
Yeah, and then eventually, like, I had a dream, and I was like, "That would be a cool book," and then it took me, like, 6 years to turn that idea into, like, a workable plot, and then 6 more years to actually really make it a workable plot and actually, like, get it written down and published.
That whole getting it written down part's a tricky bit, right?
It is, yes.
As I'm struggling with some of the getting it written down part myself, but that's cool.
Yeah.
That's quite the journey. I kind of resonate with some of that too, though, because like I was writing when I was kind of young, and then like I kind of started trying to write as a young adult, but then kind of put it on the back burner for a regrettably long period of time while I went and got a real job.
Do another
But,
stuff. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I did.
Um, and part of that 6 years between when I really started writing and then when I published that first book was learning how to write.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, like, at first, I was just reading writing blogs a lot of the time,
Mm.
and one thing I did with my first book that I definitely hadn't done to nearly the same extent with the last one is I went back through and I read the first chapters, like, over and over again. And, some people say, like, "Don't edit as you write," like, get the story down, the story might change as you're writing, there's all these reasons not necessarily to edit as you write.
Sure, sure.
Um, but in my case, it was helpful because as I was learning new skills, I was practicing them as I was going back and reading things that I had written. And then, I was making the language more active, and all these things that at first I didn't get, and then at some point it would kind of click, and I'd be like, oh, I get it now. And then I could, go back and read what I had written and put it into action.
That's awesome. I like that being, like, applying those skills as you're learning it. That's good. Did you kind of during this period, did you think about writing more short stories too, or were you writing short stories, or were you like, no, I just want to get this book idea done?
I just wanted to get the book idea done.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily have any ideas for short stories, and I would like to write some short stories now. But I almost feel like, wait, I don't know how to write a short story, and I'm kind of worried if I start to write a short story that I'm going to end up with like this really like long, full-blown story, which would be fine.
Right.
I mean, there's worse
Yeah.
problems to
Yeah,
have.
you're right.
But this idea of kind of taking, with a short story, you got to move fast. You gotta get to, whatever the problem or the issue is. You can't do
Yeah.
your world building for like 3 chapters, which I don't do anyway. But you have
Yeah.
to just be very much more focused in what you do, and
Yep.
then come to that resolution within a couple pages. But I'd
Right.
like to try that now. So that I think that's on. And I have this idea. I haven't gotten very far in it, but I'd like to try different things in the short stories. So I'd like to try to like maybe write a short story where I go for a very specific mood, and I practice
Mm-hmm.
my ability in writing that mood. And then,
Mm-hmm.
another short story where I practice, say, like writing a really like interesting character or something, like
Mm-hmm.
kind of give
Mm-hmm.
myself an assignment, almost like you might do in a writing class. Like, okay,
Love
write
it.
a short story and do, that does this like particular, develops this skill in a particular way.
Yep.
So yeah, that's kind of something that's on my mind for trying out, but haven't
I
gotten
love that. I've tried doing some short stories with mixed success, but to try to refine the my hone my writing craft a little bit.
Mhm.
One, and this is not like a perfect one-to-one for what you're talking about, but it's kind of close. Have you ever heard of the NYC Midnight competitions?
No.
Okay, so it's nycmidnight.com. Um, the I think it gets the name because like at midnight Eastern time, New York City time, you'll get like the initial prompt and whatever, and then it'll have to be the due dates tend to be around midnight also. But
Mhm.
the way like there's multiple different competitions for different story lengths. Some of them are like short stories, some of them are like flash fiction or even microfiction, et cetera, et
Oh,
cetera.
yeah.
Right. But I've done 2 of them, I think. And for me, in both instances, and it can vary these sort of variables a little bit, but in both of them, they would give me a genre, a, setting, and an object. And the story has to include, like, it has to be in that genre as they sort of defined it. It has to
Okay.
occur in that setting that they define, and somewhere in the story, the object has to be present, right?
Okay.
So it's fun to kind of stretch,
Yeah.
right? I had one that I had to write, and I'm writing like a science fantasy right now, and I have a draft of like a near fiction science fiction that's a little bit harder, but also has like some humor in it. Have an
Mhm.
idea for like a kind of an epic urban fantasy. I got a prompt with MIC Midnight to write a romance in an attic that has a chocolate cake.
Oh, fun. Okay.
Right. So I had to make that work, and it was cool to have that challenge, you know.
Yeah. So did you throw that science fiction elements in or fantasy elements into your romance, or did you just
No. So that particular romance story got no fantasy, nor did it get no. That one was just very kind of contemporary. I was happy with that story. That one
cool.
did okay in that
And
competition, but
oh, cool. How long do they give you to finish
yeah.
it?
So that is another fun element about the thing. So there's multiple stages to the competition. The initial stages you'll get more time, and it varies a little bit depending on the length of the competition. Because again, there's like short stories, flash, micro. Um, I think the first stage of like of that flash fiction-y competition that I was in, you had like a week to write the story.
Okay.
And you'll write, there's like a first stage and a second stage, and if you enter, you're guaranteed to be in those two stages. If you're in like the top 10 of your group of like 30ish or whatever, then you move on to the next stage.
Okay.
And in that instance, you'll get more like 4 days or something for the next like
Mhm.
prompt. And then if you make it to the next
Not a lot of
stage, like
time.
you'll get like maybe the weekend, and then eventually you get like 24 hours for like the final.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. You have to
That's
really
not
just cram,
much. Yeah.
right?
I don't know if I could be creative like that on demand, though I think having those prompts would help.
Right, right.
Wow, that could be a little challenging.
Well, I think that's, to me, that's like what's kind of it's appealing because it has the prompts, which makes the challenge a little bit more easier than just like, here's a blank page, give me something in 24 hours, you know?
Mhm.
Um, but the time constraint, I think for me, I found, at least at one point, because I've done it twice. The second time I was like, this is just not a good time and it's not happening. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
there's
no,
too much
sometimes
life going on and I can't do it, you know? But the first time it was like, this is great because I'm so constrained in my time. I can't like completely lose track of like my other projects, like, because I have to do this in a very short amount of time. So
mm,
I'm not gonna spend 2 months writing this short story
months
for
or
this
yeah,
competition. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a good point.
yeah.
Who are the judges?
Ooh, good
Or
question. I'm pretty sure it varies. I don't know. I'll have to send you the link and you can check that part out. But
okay.
yeah, there's a panel of judges. It's it's a pretty big competition. There's like thousands of people that will enter each one,
Oh, I bet, but that's really interesting. Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Well, I do have to say one of for me, one of the advantages of being self-published is I
Yeah.
write on my own timeline.
Yeah.
Way if because actually, so I wrote the this book, and then, before I published it, I wanted to have a sense of where the entire trilogy was going, and if I needed to change anything, I wanted, like, needed to plant any seeds in the first book
Mhm,
or
mhm,
whatever that
mhm,
would then come to fruition in the third book.
mhm,
Um, so I got about 2/3 of the way through this book and had an idea like where I wanted to go with it, but it was not quite sure about the ending. Other than having sort of a vague idea of like this is what I want to happen, I didn't know exactly like how it was going to happen. And so then I finish this book. I clean it up. I send it to the editor. I get it published and everything. And then I do the same with this book. I clean it up. I fix a few things in it. I send it to the editor and everything. And then I get to like the first part of this book and I clean it up and, make some changes to it. And then I like, I had ideas for the ending, but I wasn't loving them. And I like pondered them and I pondered them. And it was probably like half a year before I was like, okay, I've got, and I tried different things out. And then I was like, okay, I've got it. I know how it's going to work now. Um, and so I don't know how well I would do, with that kind of like shorter time frame. But on the other hand, like if it's this is kind of like high stakes. At this point you have about 1,000 pages worth of trilogy. Like I really
right,
wanted to get it right. On the
right,
other hand, the short story competition,
right,
that's more for fun, so maybe
right.
I could do that. But I know that like sometimes it just takes me a while to get the details right and to work out to get that inspiration too.
Yeah, 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 I hear you. I'm kind of like jealous in a way that you're like, yeah, you gotta just give it yourself, because I put so much like pressure on myself to like, try to, oh, I want to write fast, whatever. And,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, it's nice that you're
Yeah.
able to be like, no, I'm gonna do this on my own timeline, give myself the time that I need, you know?
Yeah, and I think it helps with sales if you keep getting more books out.
Sure.
But for me, with also like, working full time, and I've also realized, now that I finished a trilogy, I have to do more of some things to kind of take care of myself physically. Like I need to
Oh,
exercise
okay.
more and I need to make sure I get more sleep. And things that I wasn't doing a super great job of, when I was working on
Sleep?
and it
What?
doesn't leave me quite as much time. So I try not to put like those time pressures on
Yeah.
myself Even though,
Yeah.
I would love to be writing more books. I would love to, be drawing more people in. I want to, kind of do some books that have like maybe still feel like my writing style, but have like a little bit of different feel to it. Like there's some people that have told me like, no, I don't like dystopia. It's too dark for me right now. Need
Mm-hmm.
something a little bit happier. So, like maybe trying something a little happier, or, something with maybe some more fantasy elements, or, like I would love to have like a baby dragon, in a book.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah.
But so I like to be able to give readers more options, but it's too stressful to try to be like, okay, I have to write, another book in the next year or whatever.
Yeah. That's good.
Which is really nice about self-publishing, is you don't
Yep.
have to do that.
You're not under any contract, right?
Yep.
Exactly. Exactly. Plus, I mean, yeah, though, you've now got a complete trilogy that you can go point to and be like, hey, while you're waiting for the next one, reread that,
Yeah. And actually, to celebrate that the trilogy is being done, I just put the first book, the ebook, on sale for 99 cents. And I'm not,
Nice.
it's going to be on sale for a while. I haven't decided yet if that's going to be like the permanent sale price, or if it's I'm going to try to do like some promotions and stuff and see if I can hook people into the trilogy. It may be like in a couple months, I'll raise the price again.
Sure.
But if people are interested, you've got at least a couple months to go, pick that book up for 99 cents.
Go get that book. All right. And so speaking of, can you give us the pitch for it? I think you've got it. I think you gave it in my questionnaire, right?
I did give it to you. I think that the pitch that I usually do is more, well, there's two things. One, kind of some things that I've mentioned, but it's around the setting.
Okay.
So it's people now have embedded chips, they can some people spend all their time in virtual reality. And when I first had this idea of people spending all their time in virtual reality, I imagined some rich people who had like, basically people working for them who could take care of their bodies, so that they could just exist in virtual reality. And then one day, it took me a while to get to this point, but it was really obvious once I got there. I realized if you're just living all your time in virtual reality, you don't care about having a large house or any of that stuff. So all you really need is a pod to take care of your body. And then I thought, okay, well, then at some point, some entrepreneur is going to figure out that they can just offer these pods to people who are living in virtual reality all the time. So there's these almost matrix like warehouses. The difference is that the people know they're in there and have chosen to be in there, but that they have pods that are taking care of their bodies. And that's I think I say in the books, it's about like a third of the population spends all their time in virtual reality.
Wow.
And then you have other people then who are chipped, like this vice president to the virtual reality company who can go in and out, but she doesn't live in virtual reality. And then you have people that are unchipped who can't go in and out as easily. They can still use like a computer terminal like we do, but they don't have that like immersive virtual reality interaction. And for Amaya, this woman right here, you can see like she has some resentment about like not fitting in with her friends and not being able to be fully a part of society, I guess, because she isn't able to go in and out of virtual reality much. Cooper, this guy, he doesn't really care quite as much. And then there's other people. So the other thing that I realized too is that as much as I actually really like my computer, I like my cell phone, I just get so frustrated with it. And sometimes I just want to be done with it and like throw it against the wall or not use it. And then I realized like, well, even so I really miss my old Motorola flip phone because I love that. It's like like a Star Trek communicator. You like it flipped open, and then we were like, man, did our conversation like slam it shut. And it was this really pretty bright red color. And I want to get one, but then I'm like, but wait, I can't live without like my iPhone. And so you get to this point where like you feel like you can't live without your technology. Or like if you go to a store and they're like, oh well, we don't accept any other. You have to pay in our app. Like, we don't even take credit cards anymore. Like you have to download the app on your phone and pay that way. And it's almost like if you don't want a smartphone, there's so many things like you can't even like do anymore. So
Right.
group of people that becomes very frustrated, and they realize that like they almost they can't, they want to use pre-smartphone technology, but it's like they can't live where everybody else is
Mm.
because it's just too complicated to try to exist without modern technology in a modern
Right.
world. So
Right.
they isolate themselves. And that was interesting too. Like the more I thought about it, at first I thought, oh, well, people could go back and forth. And the more I thought about it, like if people are going back and forth, they're going to be bringing this modern technology home, or the kids are going to be tempted by this modern technology. And so that was kind of like an interesting part of it too, in that I realized I started thinking more about how like these people needed to be isolated and they needed to be hidden. And then they lied to their kids too. And so, kind of realizing that if you want to have this world that exists with this earlier technology, and you don't want any of that newer technology to come in or kind of like corrupt your world, there's all these things that you have to do to keep yourself isolated, to like kind of basically protect or wall yourself off from advanced technology. So that's the setting. And then, the thing that kicks it off is, this woman here, Mariella, she's this vice president. She gets a new boss. He has this digital clone of himself. And it's this new product he wants to market where people can clone themselves. And then the clone will do your work for you. And then you can go do whatever you want to while the clone is doing your work. And you get the income that the clone is earning for you. So he wants to show off how great this new product is. So he gives her job to his digital clone. And of course, he's this like ambitious, ruthless jerk. And so his clone, of course, is also an ambitious, ruthless jerk. And she wants to get rid of the clone. And, that sets off, this journey into this really low tech, pre-smartphone world that's isolated itself that I mentioned. And that kind of kicks it all off, and it goes on from there.
Wow. So many really interesting concepts there. I love a lot of that. I mean, even the idea of the digital clone isn't like super far off. I mean, right now Tesla's sort of, they had this announcement for these robo taxis, and supposedly you'll be able to buy the robo taxi and then like have it be as an autonomous Uber that's making you money.
Oh, it just makes your money for that'd be so much better than have to do the driving yourself, right?
Right, right, right.
Yeah. And your
Wild.
clone isn't going to want money, or if they, in this future, like there's laws have been passed that the clones can't earn wages, because they don't want them taking jobs from people. So,
But at the like, I wonder about like with something like that digital clone, and like even the robo taxis. I mean, I feel like that's just going to exacerbate existing disparity, because those that can afford it are going to buy one or
yes,
two or 200 or whatever, and like have their own fleet of like income generating vehicles, whereas like those that can't are like, now they can't drive Uber either. You know what I mean?
exactly. And and that's what it's marketed as in the book, is like, oh, you can buy your clone and have somebody take over, do your job for you. But then
Right.
what happens is that the employers just get like these clones, and then they just get rid of their employees.
Yeah.
So it
Right.
actually, that's really not a point in the book, but I think it's just kind of like mentioned at one point, like somebody says, oh, it's going to be so great for workers. And somebody else is like, no, this isn't really going to be that great for workers.
Yep.
Um, and another actually technology thing I was just talking with my sister about too is this idea of like sentient AI.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
the more I wrote the books and the farther I got in, the more I started to feel like some of my artificially intelligent characters were, one in particular, I just really felt like she was sentient. So, that was kind of an interesting exploration for me too.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That's fascinating. So I clearly, there like some of the books occurs in this like metaverse virtual world, right? And some of the stories occur outside. So it's
So there's
yeah, right?
there's really three main link locations. There's the virtual world where there's not all that, actually for the first book, there's not that many scenes
Scenes.
take place
Sure.
in the virtual world. So, just want to keep expectations there on that one. Really, actually, by the time you get to the third book, you get a lot more that's set in the virtual world. And then there's these two, there's the modern advanced city that you see, especially like in this one. You also see it some in here too. um and and then you also have quite a few scenes that are set in this isolated, like pre-smartphone area too.
Wow. Cool.
Yep.
Sounds like a fun read. So yeah.
It was
have
fun to
check-
write. I have to say, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed getting to know the characters. I enjoyed seeing where the plot went because sometimes I didn't know, or sometimes it went in directions that I didn't expect. So I had a lot of fun writing it.
Nice. Do you have audiobooks available or not yet?
Not yet. I would like to make some because there's some, I feel like that kind of opens up a whole additional market, but they're kind of expensive to do well. And so,
Yes,
it's
they are.
sort of figuring out
I just heard there's this one particular like podcast or not, sorry, audiobook narrator duo that's charged like $700 per finished hour. That's the most expensive I've ever heard. Right? Absurd.
Yeah, I feel like that might be for authors that already have people who are getting tattoos of their characters.
Yes.
Once you start getting tattoos of your characters, you can get this $100 audiobook.
Right? Yeah. We got a ways to go, don't we?
Exactly.
Well, Anna, this has been a delight talking with you. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed talking with you, and really great, interesting conversation. I really enjoyed it and really appreciate being on here.
My pleasure. Where can people find and follow you online, please?
So Instagram, I think it's L Ana Ellis, or maybe L Ana Ellis. My website is fireforgedbooks.com. And I'm also on Twitter, but I don't check it all that much. So probably best to find me on Instagram.
L Ana Ellis Books on Instagram.
Is it? Okay. Thank you. I appreciate you checking that. I don't actually check that much. So yeah.
I got you. Ooh, really? And you got these pictures of your 3 characters all pinned up.
Yes, I got the character art there. Yes. So if you want to check it out, please.
I love those like iridescent, like kind of tech vibe butterflies on the clothing.
Yes. So these are actually, she wears this in a later scene. But the butterflies actually appear to be flying around her dress, and she explains how it's actually like little nano threads that connect them to her dress. But she really likes to go with kind of out there clothing. Like one point she wears a watermelon dress, and just kind of thinking about, going back to this idea of like having different fabric in the future, like made out of like nanoparticles or whatever, that you would have so many more exciting things that you could do with your clothing. And so I had fun kind of making up dresses for her.
Super cool. I love that. Yeah. I mean, so many different elements in these stories. Lots of creativity. Love it. All right. Well, and everyone should go check it out because it's only 99 cents right now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Possibly for a limited time.
All right. Anna, again, this has been lovely. Anyone watching either now or in the future, thank you for watching as well. And to everyone, Anna, everyone else, if no one's told you today, you're an absolute legend.
Oh, thank you. You too.